everyone, we're Pooja and Robbie, and we found an article in Huffington Post about 8 questions interracial couples get asked. So we thought we'd share our experiences with you, so let's get right into it. How does your family feel about your partner's race? So I think because my family is very mixed already and quite liberal, they don't really see Robbie as a race. They don't really see him as like half Chinese, half American. They just kind of see him as a person, and I think that's what they base their opinions on.
I think that my family is quite liberal as well. One of my cousins in the US did ask whether we would be having a traditional Indian wedding. So I think that there's a lot of curiosity from my family when it comes to me having an Indian partner. And so I remember that on Diwali, my mom organized a dinner at a nice North Indian restaurant in Singapore, and there was a lot of interesting food. So my family really is interested in finding more about Pooja's culture, and that's something I really appreciate.
So next question, you're dating an Indian girl, Chinese guy. Are you worried about the stereotypes? I think when I met you, none of the stereotypes related to Chinese culture, Chinese people really came out. I think it's because of the way that you've been raised here in Singapore, as very from a multicultural family. So I don't think that any of the stereotypes related to maybe eating chicken feet or anything like that really came out.
So no stereotypes worry me. I think maybe one impression that people have about Indian people is that they're good looking. So that stereotype kind of works out in a good way for me. Maybe I get a little bit conscious when people kind of assume we're not a couple. So, be it at the airport or when we're out on a date in public. Sometimes you can tell by the way that people look at you that they think you're just, friends or acquaintances, and that makes me uncomfortable. So maybe it goes back to the assumption or the stereotype that an Indian woman wouldn't choose to date an Asian man like me, and that makes me a little bit self-conscious or uncomfortable.
Would it be easier to date your own race? So I think that for me, because India is so multicultural, there's so many different types of food and cuisines and religions, I feel like it's almost multiple races within a race. So I don't think that would be easier, if a North Indian were to date a South Indian or a Gujarati, because they kind of come with their own customs and traditions. I
think personally, it's more about how two people complement each other rather than what ethnic background they're from. And it would be quite difficult for me to date someone of my own race, so to speak, because I am mixed race. I think especially being mixed race like me, you kind of realize that these labels are pretty arbitrary, and we're all striving to make a connection with other people, and I think we should see people for who they are as humans and as people first before we look at ethnic labels and so on.
So next question, think about children. Do you think that they will be bullied for being different? I think for us, no, because we are the type of people who would always live in a very metropolitan, already diverse community. So I think that would be a concern if, maybe people are living in the more countryside or the more rural areas where people don't really integrate so much. But for us, I think regardless of where we live, Singapore or elsewhere, we won't have that issue of, already in Singapore and Malaysia, I think it's quite common to see people of different cultures and ethnicities mixing. So I think it's definitely becoming more normalized.
Yeah, I think that it's a serious issue to consider, the discrimination or being bullied. I just think that no matter who you are, someone out there is going to find a reason to be unhappy with you or to tease you or bully you or criticize you. So for our kids in the future, I think that I really want to teach them to stand up for themselves and be confident in who they are. I think maybe aside from being bullied because of your race, another concern that I might have for our future children is if people try to box them into certain stereotypes or labels. So for instance, growing up, I think because to many people I appear more Chinese looking than Caucasian looking, sometimes the way that people talk to me made me feel like I wasn't Caucasian enough. And that kind of made me feel bad because my father is one half of me, being Caucasian is one half of me. So for our kids in the future being triracial, I hope that people don't try to box them in oh, you're only one thing. I hope that more and more people realize that being mixed race is, being more than one thing, and that those different identities should be recognized and celebrated.
Did you only date your own race prior to this relationship? No, I mean, I've dated Indian, but I've also dated other ethnicities.
So prior to my relationship with Pooja, I have dated people from different backgrounds, and I think that someone's ethnic background isn't something that I look at as a criteria when choosing a partner. So it's never been that I would only date people from one background. It's really been a range.
So next we have, can you help me find an Indian girl or an Asian partner? I would suggest check out a dating app.
I don't think I can help you. I think you should put yourself out there and see what happens.
Do you find the cultural differences frustrating? I actually find the cultural differences really exciting and interesting, because not only do we get to celebrate Diwali, but we also get to celebrate Chinese New Year and Christmas. So it's like there's so many different festivals that we now can call like our own.
Yeah, and not to mention how after meeting Pooja, I made my first trip to India, and that really just opened my eyes to another part of the world, not only in terms of cuisine, but just culture, festivals, and tourist attractions. It's so fascinating, and I wouldn't have seen that part of the world if not for Pooja and her family.
Yeah, and I think that just sort of like your family introducing you to all these like authentic Asian cuisines and stuff, like I wouldn't have otherwise been able to experience those things.
Right, and I think that, because we're learning about each other's cultures, it kind of spurs me on to want to find out more about my own culture and try new things that maybe I haven't tried in my own culture with you.
Yeah. Do people stare at you when you're on a date? Yes and no. I think that that's more of like an age thing. Like if someone is older, I would say they stare more. Like I remember when we went to like the Hungry Ghost Festival, there were a lot of people there who like stared at us, specifically me. But I think it's probably more of a generational thing. Like people of like the millennial like age group, I think that we don't really stare when we see like different races dating.
I think that in Asian countries, staring does happen more often. So like maybe there isn't like a taboo against staring. So being with Pooja, I definitely have noticed people like looking at her or looking at us, and it does make me a little bit uncomfortable, but I've kind of trained myself not to be affected by it.
So that's a wrap. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you like what you saw, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.